even if people are older, they aren't you. I think that's really important. You have your own experiences, you have your own ideas that you bring to the table, and that could be in a social discussion or in a technical discussion. It's valuable to offer your own ideas and your input, no matter your age. I don't think age should matter because you do have that unique perspective.
Hello, my name is Katie Ashley. I am the FY26 volunteer coordinator with the SWE Early Career Professional Affinity Group, or the ECP AG for short. Welcome to the Verse Society of Women Engineering podcast. I'm here today with Zoe Husted and Kathryn Wittek, two early career professionals who have stepped into leadership roles alongside their demanding technical careers. I'm excited to talk with them about leadership, what that can look like in their early careers, as well as the skills that you build along the way and why leadership might not require seniority or having it all figured out. So welcome, Kathryn and Zoe.
Yay. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited to kick off 2026 with this.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess first we can do a little introductions of yourselves and then kind of start with, when did you first start seeing yourself as a leader? Maybe even not even in title, but even in an informal way. We can start with Zoe.
Yeah, I'm Zoe. I'm a senior software engineer at Google, working on some machine learning for Google Maps specifically. I'm based out in the Bay Area in California. I've been involved in SWE for a long time, since I started college a while ago now, and I've been graduated just about 4.5 years or so. In my SWE life, I am currently a member of the SWE Senate, as well as president of my local professional section, the Golden Gate Section, and the conference and awards chairs for the Early Career Professionals Affinity Group. I kind of first saw myself as a leader. This is really going back, but my senior year in high school, I was actually the captain of my golf team in high school, which might be a fun new fact for my friends on here. But this was like a little bit of a seniority thing, but it did come with a title. And I think that was really the first time I even had to deal with navigating interpersonal relationships and dealing with like a team and understanding like what it means to lead, even at, what seems like a very simple level looking back on it now. There was no major drama, but it was a different sort of situation than I had been in before. And I think that kind of put me in the mindset of like, you are now someone that people look up to, and like you kind of have to treat people differently and like act in a different way in order to lead. Yeah, I'd say that was kind of my very first intro to leadership.
Very early on, seeing kind of the eyes on you definitely can get in your mind and start that shift of leadership. Kathryn, did you have the same thing so early on?
Yeah, I actually have almost the exact story, but with the tennis team. But I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Kathryn Wittek. I am a systems and test engineer at Northrop Grumman in Annapolis, Maryland. So I do marine and undersea type of things. I am with SWE ECP AG for the second year as design coordinator. And then this year I am the fiscal year president for my local section, Baltimore-Washington. Zoe, when you first started your story, I kind of laughed and tried to keep it contained because before we started recording, I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about when I was on the tennis team in high school. And so when you said golf team, I was like, oh, okay, this definitely is a similar story. I think in high school, I really kind of started to find myself outside of discovering leadership. I went to a new school. I was finding my place socially and academically and finding my unique strengths and how to utilize them. Things like organization and creativity and my kind of scatterbrain that sometimes happened, I started using as a strength. I was on the tennis team all 4 years, and similar to seniority for the golf team, it sounds like senior year, you're probably going to be a captain. But I was able to do that and have kind of leading within even as a sophomore and junior when we were winning. And it showed me that even though you're playing individual matches, you were still a team and you only really succeeded if your team did.
For sure. I think the team sports and entering into team sports or even just sports in general was kind of the first step for a lot of people of like realizing they're not only a part of a team and where that hierarchy and where kind of like structure then kind of comes from of leaders and being captains and being captains of a sports team. how did kind of then your expectations of leadership, not even just in your respective sports roles, but further on into your professional careers, maybe even, how did that differ from the reality? Or I guess you can even talk a little bit about that progression. Within sports, you were like, okay, this is how I'm stepping into leadership, but then how did that kind of change in the type of leadership later on?
Yeah, I think I was very similar to a lot of people where growing up, I thought kind of all leaders were very similar and they learned the same skills, had the same traits, all kind of came from the same seed. I think that's the furthest from the truth. And I think everyone will agree with that, that so many things go into becoming and being a successful leader. And it depends on if you're doing it as a sports team, as an extracurricular activity, or at work, like we are as engineers. And it's your unique experiences and your training that brings that new perspective as a leader. I think the sports analogy that we both have is that I think we took informal situations where we were maybe in a group of friends or whatnot and started stepping up. And then it started becoming more prevalent where, oh, I would step up to be a team lead on a project that I usually wouldn't have done. Or I'll say, okay, I'll present these slides, that type of thing. And then going from there, it kind of snowballed into I am a leader today.
I would say on my side, when I got into college, I basically immediately joined SWE my very first semester freshman year, and I was so involved, and I ended up taking on the role of president at my collegiate section at UC Berkeley here in California. And that year, the year that I served as president, was actually 2020, and that was our completely online school year. And I'd been in like leadership roles in my collegiate section those years leading up to it, but it felt very different to kind of be like, oh, really leading this entire org. And now it's 2020 and now COVID is there. We can't really do stuff in person anymore. And I think that kind of made me realize that a lot of leadership is really navigating those ambiguous problems. I think in my head, I had seen it more as like, I don't know, you just like give directives and you have these set things that you know you need to do. And then what I didn't expect was like, uh-oh, how do we now completely re-navigate this like truly novel situation that we were in that year? So I had to really learn how to pivot. I had to keep this organization running and like keep new members engaged. Like we didn't really want drop off in membership once we were able to go back in person. We came up with new ways to run our officer meetings that were more engaging over Zoom and hosting our large general body meetings to still keep people connected and really just like rework the entire system that we had been operating on. Like running virtual outreach events, I think was really a tough one, but that really gave me insight into the kind of really difficult situations that leaders have to navigate, and people look to you to answer those questions and figure out, you know, what the path forward is. So that was a really novel experience for me, stepping into that sort of leadership role. And then the other thing that I had thought about, and this did kind of stem on, you know, my first official leadership role on the golf team as well, but it's much more difficult to navigate personal relationships as a leader and having to lead your peers and navigating just like team dynamics as a whole. Unfortunately, not everyone likes each other all the time. You really hope that they do, but sometimes it's just not the case. And making sure that like your team feels cohesive and feels like they all feel included and that their voices are heard, I think was a new skill that I had to stretch as well. And, you know, over COVID and now even into my professional career and my professional SWE career, I think I still definitely keep those lessons with me.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, Zoe, you touched on it where you were leading and then also at the same time, external, you know, circumstances like COVID, like stepping into a president's role type of thing were all happening kind of at the same time. So you touched on it a little bit, but could you explain, I guess, maybe more about how you balance that you're leading, but also learning and changing and adapting at the same time?
Definitely. Something that's very important to me is really asking for feedback often and getting input from the people that I'm working with and the people that I'm leading. I want to make sure that I'm not the only voice talking and that other folks feel like they're contributing to the organization, because they truly are. Like, this is not a one person kind of job. We need all the people that we work with, and there's a reason that we have multiple people working on these sorts of things. So I do really try to look for feedback. And I think that was really helpful during, that specific period in time where we were just completely navigating a new situation and really relying on the other officers that I had worked with and that had experience and that could give their insights onto what's the best way to go about this. Like, are there things that we need to cut? Are there things that we really want to keep and just change? And so I think asking for that feedback and understanding what other people would do in that situation is a really great way to learn. I also think you have to own your mistakes and, actively working to ensure that you don't make them again. Like, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, my bad, I won't do it again. It's another thing to really take the time to make sure that you don't make those mistakes again. I really do my best to try to give grace when I see mistakes happening, and I hope people do the same for me. But that's just something that I really try to empower is both giving and receiving grace, especially when you're leading a team of volunteers like we are in SWE.
Yeah, I think learning and leading go so hand in hand. They're kind of the same thing to me. They're not separate. I didn't really talk about my SWE background, but similar to Zoe, I was involved basically right when I stepped onto campus at Virginia Tech. I went, how can I sign up for SWE? Because I had actually started a SWE Next at my high school for the other engineering women that were there. I went to a STEM high school. And so I knew I wanted that community in a new place and joined right away and held some various roles. And I think stretched different parts of my brain in these different roles because you have to learn, you can't apply to the same skills that you have as a education outreach chair. You're doing all these education events and in person with Girl Scouts and et cetera, and working with the local schools. And that's a different part of my brain that I was stretching when I was secretary or holding executive role like vice president, because you're learning how to adapt and work with different groups. I think they all intertwine. I think whether it's the high school team or working with K through 12 or working with senior members of your team at work, you're applying these skills and changing how they're being used. Something that has always stuck with me is, I forget who had told me about it, but it was always have a growth mindset. You never want to walk into a situation saying you know everything and you're not going to learn anything. You want to learn as you lead, and you want to take time during your different projects or the teams that you're on to figure out how they're led and kind of break it down. And you can either do that as you're sitting in a meeting or even after, if that works better for you, like writing it out. You kind of can ask your questions like what works, what doesn't, what would you do differently if you were in charge? And how can you implement these things where you're sitting today? I think your mind is always going, which some people it leads to burnout, others it leads to being really successful. And there's a happy medium and just understanding each situation you're in and how to learn from it.
You can't see me, Kathryn, but I feel like I'm just like nodding really hard.
Yeah, I think from both, even what Zoe and Kathryn, you were saying of being, open humility almost, of being able to kind of that leading part of being able, like, I don't know everything and I want everybody to, give that feedback and be like, what can we do better as a team? What can we do? How can I be a better leader? How can I help achieve, this goal type of thing? That makes a lot of sense. And definitely the learning and leading and being transparent about it explains a lot of it. So to transition a little bit from what your guys' SWE roles were to now maybe more leading roles in your respective careers, how have you navigated leading people who were older or more experienced than you?
Yeah, I can kind of kick this off. I think it's really important to have a solid foundation of trust and respect in the workplace, on your teams, whether it's your functional team or like a team you're working on just randomly. But if you don't have that trust and respect, those foundations are kind of needed to be successful, because it values a lot when it comes to intergenerational teams. It was something that I got to speak on at We25, which was awesome. How you can meet the needs of each generation and what has come to their needs and that type of thing. But even if people are older, they aren't you. I think that's really important. You have your own experiences, you have your own ideas that you bring to the table, and that could be in a social discussion or in a technical discussion. It's valuable to offer your own ideas and your input, no matter your age. I don't think age should matter, because you do have that unique perspective.
On my side, I think it's always been a little bit of a tightrope walk for me to make sure that I'm listening to the insights of those more experienced, because they do have different perspectives, like they have institutional knowledge, both at work and in SWE, but also trying to understand my role as maybe a newcomer, a fresh face of like bringing new ideas to the table and how that can kind of benefit, whatever project or group we're working with. When people give the answer of like, oh, this is just how we've always done it, that can be very frustrating. But it's just like important to actually bring solutions or like bring up kind of more questions. Don't let that lie. Don't just get frustrated. Like maybe you can sit with it and be frustrated for a second, but understand that sometimes that just is the answer that you will get, and how can we work through it. I've definitely relied on the experience of both older SWE members, like in the Senate and in my professional section, for things like best practice and just like historical things that I don't have any context on. I just wasn't around for. And same with work. Like there's so many folks that I work with that have, maybe have PhDs in the stuff that I'm working with and just have so much knowledge. And it's important to take that experience and actually utilize it. But know that like just because you don't have their experience doesn't mean that your experience isn't valuable. Also, you can bring a new perspective. So I would say my approach is generally to still make sure that everyone feels heard when I'm more in a leadership capacity, and making sure that their experience is considered, and still doing my best to actually guide the conversations and decisions to be results that are good for the team or good for the project as a whole. I think everyone will have their own individual opinions and they can be integrated as needed, but it's your job as a leader in that situation to really keep things on track.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something that when someone says, oh, well, that's just how we've always done it, I don't think it's beneficial when you just go, why? It's kind of like when you're like babysitting or something, they're like, why? I feel like it's kind of counterproductive, but if you are able to kind of digest and then maybe come back with, well, what if we did it this way and explained a way that might be beneficial, or just get their eyes on it, I think that's something that's really helpful, because you're not just kind of stomping and setting your feet down on the ground, but you're helping the program or whatever you're doing move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And somebody who has maybe more experience than you can learn from them to make yourself even a better leader. And so I guess it's also about how have those experiences, your interactions with the teams that you have been on in past, shaped the kind of leader you're becoming or want to become?
Yeah, I can start here. I love saying that SWE is kind of a safe space to fail. I think this is thrown around sometimes, but I definitely think my SWE leadership has really helped me understand where my strengths and my weaknesses are as a leader, especially when to rely on a team versus when to make executive decisions, knowing what you know, hopefully knowing what you don't know. It's really just not feasible to do everything on your own, which is maybe sometimes the mindset that we have coming out of college, where it's sometimes every man for themselves, every woman for themselves, like learning how to rely on a team and knowing what to delegate, which is kind of a unique experience you have once you start leading, is actually being able to delegate with authority in a way. I know, like for my local professional section, I really rely heavily on my chairs to kind of execute those big ideas and the goals that we set at the beginning of the year for our section. And I kind of see it then as my role to really check in and make sure that they feel supported doing that work. They have a good general direction to check in, to head in. I want to make sure that everyone's working well together, that there's no communication gaps, like kind of filling in the gaps, but making sure that those that are actually on the team are the ones doing the work for what they care about and what they're kind of meant to be doing. And I know that even working in the Senate and working with the Early Career Professionals AG, that like I try to instill some of those values in my team as well. I know we've actually had a discussion within the ECP AG about different types of leadership, and I think there's a whole there's a bunch of different ones, but the ones that really resonate with me are like the transformative leadership and the servant leadership. So transformative being more along the lines of like the big idea and the visionary, and then you're relying on your team to execute, like I was talking about, and as well as the idea of servant leadership of knowing what is actually annoying for your team to do and what they want to do, and taking off some of the annoying parts off their plate and making their experience better, because that helps make the team better as a whole. And so kind of understanding what my leadership style is, depending on the situation that I'm in, has really, I think, helped me be more effective.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same words that Zoe said, is that SWE is a safe space, not only just to fail, but I feel like when someone asks me, oh, why am I involved in SWE? Or what are you doing tonight? Oh, I can't, I have SWE type of thing. Well, why? Well, because it's my safe space, it's my community. I think SWE as a whole has kind of been my foundation as a leader, and then I've grown from there. After I had graduated and was out of my time at Virginia Tech, I had moved to a new place, was in my first job, which was not for me. And I was really struggling. And I think outside of my job not being the best fit for me, I missed having that feeling of community that SWE had given me. So I took the leap and I actually joined ECP and BWS leadership. I applied as soon as I could because these first roles I knew would bring me back, and not just my passion for SWE, but my passion to lead. So it really translated when I had heard back and was accepted as a leader in these leadership roles, and I started a new job, but I didn't have to face that transition again. I really felt more comfortable and was able to handle it better. ECP specifically really helped me transitioning jobs so close to each other and so close to after I graduated. I think there's a lot of stigma around leaving jobs so early, and I had a really hard time with my first one because I was there. I mean, within 6 weeks, I was like, this isn't for me. I function better when I'm busy and have those leadership roles that I can take on. And I just didn't see me growing at this company. And everyone was like, oh, we'll just wait 6 months or wait a year. And I was like, I can't do that to myself. I'm going crazy. So I felt more comfortable speaking up and contributing to different situations, technically and personally. So I started using those leadership skills and started to lead from below and within my team, which has gotten me to where I am today.
I'm absolutely nodding at everything you just said, because I think that is definitely the core kind of aspect of what maybe your early career professional affinity group even is, of being able to have leadership positions at such a young age and then being able to transfer them into real world aspects. I know I've taken my presentation skills that I've learned in SWE and was able to take those skills and transfer them to presentations for my work and such. So it's very kind of interchangeable in that way. And I guess I was curious of anything that you learned from one particular leadership role and skill that you learned or lesson that you learned. How were you able to transfer that into another role or another aspect of your life?
Yeah, similar to you, I think we're all kind of nodding our heads this whole time that we're talking. The presentation skills transfer over. I mean, when I was practicing for SWE25, I was having a major milestone at work, and it was the first time I was presenting with a new government customer, and I was really scared. I was new to the team, one of the only women in the room, the youngest in the room, and I was like, okay, how can I not put so much weight on myself? And I felt so prepared going into it because I was doing all these things with ECP and BWS, my local section, preparing for SWE25 and learning how to be better at presenting. So that's a direct kind of skill transfer, as well as communication, how to communicate with a large audience over a large area. ECP is worldwide. We have people over in Europe that are part of our leadership team. So we've had to transition our meetings to different times. Sometimes it's only a 3-hour difference between maybe Zoe and I. It could be 6 or 7 hours between me and somebody else on the leadership team. While it doesn't directly relate to my local section, our local section here in Baltimore-Washington is very large in a densely populated area. So trying to get from one side to the other is just a mess. So using these different ways of communicating with our members and our leadership has really excited me to try and get more involvement from our members. I introduced Slack to our leadership and maybe was like, hey, this is how ECP does it, and we are talking all the time. Is this something that we can get running? I think that's something very direct that I've taken from one SWE to the other, as well as at work.
Mine was going to be so much more tactical. I have literally bar for bar copied spreadsheets from ECP.
Oh, me too.
And like vice versa. And like once you just kind of have that breadth of experience being a part of all these different teams with different people that approach problems different ways, like you're able to really consolidate a lot of those ideas and help, all your groups perform better overall. I think not every group is run exactly the same way. For example, our affinity group is way more virtual than our local professional sections, for example. But taking those best practices across the groups really, I think, makes all of them perform better, which is a very great experience and feeling to have when you're leading those teams. That is like really the thing I thought about here.
I also have taken the file structure that we use from ECP and implemented it for our local because I just loved it so much. I think there's many tactical things, but also philosophical. I think a big part of me feeling comfortable stepping into section president for a local section, it wasn't something that was really on my radar until I was approached and we had this discussion with previous leadership that I saw other young women, both you, Zoe, and Katie, like others of the ECP. I really thought I was just too young or I wasn't ready to step into it, but I started seeing other people being lead elect or just president, and it showed me that I can do it and that I felt empowered to do it.
My role in the Senate, I originally also wasn't going to apply for, but then one of our past ECP AG co-leads, MP, said that she was going to step up. And it's that idea of having role models, right? Of like seeing someone else that's like you do it and realizing that you're also able to do it.
Absolutely. Zoe, thanks for the setup as well. I think talking a lot about that and you two being both very young in your careers and your even SWE careers, talking about that mentorship of because you saw somebody else do it or you just know somebody that you were able to like tap and be like, hey, what is this position about? What am I getting myself into? What am I, just learning and experiencing, and having experienced those, you're able to kind of pass it on not only to your professional local sections, but to your collegiate section and forever kind of that impact. So do you have any advice for, I guess, the early career people listening on how do you support kind of that through line of mentorship and while being so young still in your career?
Yeah, this is a little bit hyperbole, but literally from the day you are born, you are older than someone else. And so I think the idea that you're like too young to mentor is never true. Like, I'm an older sister. Like, I feel like I even mentored my younger sister growing up, and I'm sure she taught me a lot of things in the way too. But when you're in high school, you can help teach middle schoolers about STEM. And when you're in college, you can help high schoolers apply to college. And when you're earlier in your career, you can help college students, understand and navigate that transition after they graduate. So there's always people around to mentor, and there's always people, hopefully, to mentor you as well. And I think it's just so important to lean into it when you have it. I would also really strongly encourage peer mentorship. This is me doing my plug now for our peer partnership program that Katie actually helped found in the Early Career Professionals AG. And this has been a really great opportunity for myself when I participated in it last year to connect with someone else that's kind of in a similar life stage, like similar industry. And we were just kind of able to talk a lot about what we were going through in our jobs and, even personal life and things like that. And like, just because we were, roughly the same age, it does not mean that we weren't able to make those connections and have those conversations. I feel like I've had a lot of informal peer mentorship through the ECP AG as well, just by making those connections with people in similar life stages, talking about, how to navigate moving to a new city to start your job, and even starting that new job, what does that look like? So I think there's just so much out there, and everyone has a different experience. You will always have a different experience from someone else, and their insight will always be different, and there's always something to learn. So I think really lean into making those types of connections, and don't be so worried about, oh, I'm so young and I won't be able to provide anything. I think we all have our own stories to share.
Yeah, I mean, mentorship is so passive. Just sitting here listening to you, Zoe, I was like, oh, that was mentorship. That was mentorship. I wouldn't like my sister to know that she has mentored me, but here we are. I think we learned so much from each other, and I think mentorship goes both ways. You can grow so much from talking to people younger than you, same age as you, older than you. Again, like I mentioned before, everyone has like their own unique skills and stories that others will benefit from. So if that opportunity, like a formal opportunity, comes up to be a mentor, go for it. At work, I'm able to mentor some high school students that are working on a semester-long project just because it sounded interesting. But like informally, I feel like I remember walking into the first SWE meeting at Tech in college, and I saw the vice president doing it and I said, oh, she's my role model. I want to be like Emily. I don't think she has ever known that until this year. And I was like, when I saw her at conference, I was like, you're the reason why I stuck with it. And I saw how you were handling things and whatnot. And then the girl right next to me at our alumni dinner was like, oh, so she's my you. Like you were that to me. And I didn't know that. So it's that passive ebb and flow of everything. You don't realize you're mentoring even if you're doing it all the time. It can be informal. I think a lot of us are used to that formal mentorship. Okay, I'm going to go meet monthly with my mentor who's been working at my company longer than I've been alive, or that type of thing. So I think opening your eyes to different types of mentorship, such as our peer program or working with K through 12 students, is really eye-opening.
For sure, the mentoring part, and yeah, being able to just be there for somebody and getting to know somebody. I personally have learned so much from both of you in your individual roles and knowing you personally. And I think that not only reflects kind of the type of mentorship, but the openness of ECP AG and the support and the community, I think, that has grown within the ECP AG. And that is a testament to what the SWE Early Career Professional Affinity Group is, and formed to address the gap from collegiate to professional SWE and equip individuals with support, resources, and an inclusive community to excel in their first 10 years of their careers. And we do have a bunch of events.
We have our monthly events like coffee chats and pro dev series. So it's been a really great and busy time for ECP.
As our conferences and awards co-chair, I will put in the plug that ECP AG will be at all of our at least US SWE locals. We're trying to find some folks to attend some of the international ones as well. And we'll be hosting some meetups in Portland, Austin, and Columbus. So if you're around, please connect with us there too.
Before we kind of wrap things up, I did want to put in another, I guess, plug for our directory. So it's a really great way to find other SWE members nearby, and you can kind of create your own network. It can be people that might be in the same company, but you had no idea existed. They could be in the same field as you or moving to a new place and that you live there. And that's how I became friends with a PASCO lead MP. We never served on the board together, but we're friends now and have built that bond through the directory.
Thanks, guys. You can look at all of these events on our website, earlycareerprofessionalsag.swe.org. That is all of our links to our LinkedIn, our Slack, our monthly newsletter, new Instagram as well. And if you want to volunteer with us, we have a Google form about interest if you want to volunteer, support any events that we're currently doing or in the future, or apply for leadership in the spring. That will be coming out and on our website as well. Thank you, Kathryn and Zoe. You can find the Early Career Professional Affinity Group a part of over 20 affinity groups that SWE offers. They are designed to bring SWE members together who share identities, interests, and goals. Membership in any SWE affinity group is open to all SWE members interested in participating. Visit affinitygroup.swe.org to see all the affinity groups and join the one that interests you. I'm Katie Ashley, and from all of us at SWE, thank you for listening.